Hello, folks. It's your boy, Papa Top 912, and
DD 911.
we're coming at you today with one of our famous recipes. And the recipe for today is
beef stroganoff.
That's right. We're going to be making beef stroganoff with some egg noodles. And then on the side, we're going to make some garlic Parmesan cheese bread just to go with that meal. So, beef stroganoff is a pretty simple dish to make. We don't make it a lot, but it is something that we do when we want to kind of just get off the normal stuff that we eat and mix it up a little bit. So we're going to show you how we do it so you can mix it up a little bit at your place. I call this another 30-minute meal. This is what we like to do around here. We're kings and queens of the 30-minute meal. We don't like to eat a lot of leftovers, so we make a lot of small meals throughout the week. If we do eat leftovers, I'll take it to work, or Game of TT will take it to school for lunch, and then that's the kind of the end of it. And we'll come home and we'll start another recipe. So let's come over here and show the people what we're going to be cooking today and the ingredients that we're going to be using. We'll start over here with the bread. We have an Italian loaf, and then we have a Parmesan wedge, some butter, garlic, and Italian parsley. We're going to slice that bread in half, slather it down with some butter, freshly shaved this cheese, put that fresh shaved cheese on top of it, sprinkle a good healthy dose of garlic on it, and then we're going to chop up and this some of this Italian parsley real fine, sprinkle that on top, and then the secret is just a little bit of sugar. Put just a little bit of sugar on that as well, and that just kind of brings out the flavor of the whole thing, but not enough to make it like a dessert, just a little bit of sugar. Sugar brings out the flavor in things just like salt brings out the flavor in sweets. Now, moving over to the stroganoff itself, we're going to start off with the beef. Today we're going to be using some tenderloin fillets. I prefer to use a ribeye, but when I went to the store today, they didn't have any good looking ribeyes. I've already told y'all in other videos that I work with what kind of ribeyes I like, and they just didn't have anything that looked well today, so we're going to use the tenderloin. I prefer to use, one of those two. You can use sirloin or some other cuts if you like, but I find those to be a little tougher, and then you have to kind of cook them a little bit longer to make them tender, when if you just use a better quality meat, it just goes a lot quicker because we like to do that 30-minute thing. Now, as far as the mushrooms, we got some whole baby portobellos and then some whole shiitake mushrooms. I prefer to get them whole so I can cut them and cube them versus getting them already sliced. I prefer a bigger bite with my mushroom. So if I cube them up, I just get a bigger chunk when I'm eating. And when you get the sliced ones, sometimes they can cook down a little too much for me. Then we got another clove of that elephant garlic, and then 2 small red onions. We're going to dice both of those up really fine chop on those. Saute them down with some butter with the mushrooms. And that'll be the start of our base of our sauce that we're going to make. And then we got these egg noodles right here. We're just going to take the egg noodles once we get the meat cooked off, and then we get the mushrooms and the garlic and the onions all sauteed down, and we get our sauce kind of made up. Then we're going to put the noodles in there and just let the noodles cook in the sauce until they're done. They're al dente. Now that is going to enhance the flavor so much better, because you can cook the egg noodles by themselves and then just put them in there. But when you do that, they just don't have as much flavor. And what I'll do sometimes is, if I'm going to do that, I'll cook those egg noodles in a little bit of beef broth so they can go ahead and have a little beefy flavor. That's just what I like to do. And so in this case, since I'm going to be cooking them in the actual sauce, they're going to soak up all of that flavor. So coming back over here, we'll get back to the ingredients. I kind of went off on a little tangent there. So how we're going to flavor that sauce, we're going to be using the some Worcestershire sauce, sour cream, crushed red pepper flakes, fresh ground salt and pepper, and then the Better Than bouillon beef base. Y'all seen this several times in other videos when I use the chicken base, but this is one time where I use the beef base. And then at the very end, once the noodles are al dente and they're done and soaked up all that flavor, I'm going to thicken up the gravy with a little bit of cornstarch. And then I have some accent here. Accent is just what I call my emergency kit. If I get to the end and I don't really have that blend of flavor between the salt and the pepper that I like, I will go ahead and just sprinkle just a little bit of accent in there. And the accent will help bridge the gap between the salt and the pepper. Accent's really not a seasoning that you want to cook with. It's just a season that you want to use to augment some of your flavor. So if you're using accent, if you haven't used it, give it a shot. Sometimes it'll just boom, just a little bit, bam, like Emma used to say. Just a little bit will go a long way with bridging the gap between the salts and the peppers in your dish. So we're gonna go ahead and shut the camera down now, get our prep going on this stuff, and then we'll take it to the stove and start rendering everything down and putting it together. So we're gonna sign off right here, get this prep work done, and then we'll see you at the stove. All right, guys, so welcome back. As you can see here now, we have the ingredients all prepped up. Little Bits did the cheese there. She shredded out that cheese for me, and that's the parsley in the back cut up. Those are the mushrooms. As you can see, I just cut them into cubes like I told you about. Just cut each mushroom into fourths. And then there's the onions and the garlic cut up. And then the last thing we got right there is the beef. It's been stripped out, and you know, filet is very tender, so it was literally like ripping in my hand. So that's gonna be a really tender, good piece of meat that we're gonna be cooking with right there. So that's what everything looks like, all prepped out. Now we're gonna move over to the stove and start the cooking process. All right, guys, welcome back. You see I got my pan here on the stove, and I got my olive oil in there, a little EVOO, and you can see how fluid it is, that this is already warmed up and hot. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the oil was like right at flash point. There was just a little bit of smoke starting to come out the pan. Don't mind that water I just dripped in there. So now that it's up into temperature, I'm gonna go ahead and just drop in a little cube of butter. Got the butter in there. Going to melt that butter down. And I'm going in with the steak. And I didn't season the steak because it's going to cook away while those noodles are cooking. So it'll absorb all that flavor during that time. And when you're laying that steak in there, just lay it in there and let it cook. Don't move it. Just let it cook a minute or so on each side. One thing about my stove, it always cooks harder on one side than the other. All right, guys, so we got that all done up there. I'm going to go ahead and drop these mushrooms right on into the pan now. Pop those mushrooms right on that same hot pan. Start those to rendering down, and then I'll get the onions in there once these release some of their moisture. And then we'll put the onions and then the garlic. All right, you can see that those mushrooms are cooking down. They're starting to get a little translucent. I'll go ahead and put my onions in. Trying to save the garlic, so I got a few onions still mixed in with the garlic. Get those going. And see, I'm running a little low on oil in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a little more butter. And in addition to that, I'm gonna go ahead and start seasoning up this pot. So, shaking in the red pepper. Cracking in some salt. And cracking in that fresh black pepper. Now I didn't go too heavy on the salt because that stock is going to have a lot of salt in it already. But that's the start there for me right there. Alright, so we can go ahead and put the garlic in there now. Let that cook down for about 3 minutes. Now we're going to dump in the stock. Now this is approximately 2 cups of water right here with 2 tablespoons of that stock. I'm going to be adding more water, but before I add it, I'm going to put the noodles in, and then I'm just going to bring the liquid up enough to cover the noodles. And then I'll just keep adding water as it cools, as it kind of evaporates while the noodles are cooking. So I'm going to do a little quick taste test to see where we are and what we need to add. Alright, there's plenty of salt in there. The pepper hasn't really released itself yet, but it's going to keep going. Those red pepper flakes just intensify as you cook. So I'm not going to put anything else in there. I think it's good enough to move on to the next level. So turn my fire down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put my beef back in here, because that beef had no seasoning. So it needs to get in here and start soaking up some seasoning. And then in addition to that beef, we're going to put those noodles in here and put some more water in there. That's roughly a half a bag of noodles. Get those spread around in here. And then I'm going to have to add a heaping bunch of liquid in there because those noodles got to get covered. So here's 3 cups of water. And that right there should be enough. I'm going to put a lid on there, and those noodles will soften up and fall on down into the liquid. So at this point, I got my fire on kind of medium, and I'm just going to let it take its time now for about 15 minutes and let these noodles soften up and let that beef take on some flavor. And then we'll come back, we'll add the sour cream, and I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of Worcestershire too. Forgot to add that. So go ahead and add the Worcestershire sauce. It's about 4 good shakes. Now we're just going to let this come on up to a boil and let those noodles cook. Then all we got to do is add the sour cream, and then we'll add the cornstarch as needed until I get it as thick as I want it. And that'll basically be the end. Now, then I added a whole bunch more water, so I'm going to go ahead and taste it one more time here. Yes, sir. Still good. The Worcestershire sauce, I can taste that. So that added for the water that I diluted it with, that Worcestershire sauce is concentrated, good to go. So we're going to just go ahead and let this here cook, and we will be back. All right, y'all, welcome back. These noodles have been cooking for right at 10 minutes and they are nice and al dente now. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and just turn my flame off. I've tasted my liquid and everything still tastes magnificent. Don't need to add any more seasonings to this. So at this point now, we're going to add in our sour cream. And I'm just gonna, that's about a third of that tub of sour cream. I'm gonna go ahead and fold this in now. Alright. So look at the juice here. I'm gonna see if I can show y'all the juice, how it's pouring. It's relatively thin. So I want it just a little bit thicker than that. It's kind of water right now. I don't want the water. I want it to be a little thicker. So what I'm gonna do now is get me a little bit of cornstarch and add that cornstarch to it. And just mix cornstarch with cold water, warm water, whatever water you got. It dissolves real quick. It's not like flour. Flour clumps. Cornstarch will dissolve. So what I'm gonna do now is just pour in, just drizzle some of that in. It's about half of what I made right there. And the heat inside of the liquid activates the cornstarch. And that's what makes it thick. And the longer you cook it, the thicker it'll get. So. Alright. So it thickened up a little bit. I think I can put the rest in there. So go ahead and put the rest in. And I'm actually going to turn my heat back on for a minute, because the heat activates that cornstarch. So turn my heat back on and let this thing thicken up. And we'll be good to go. Alright guys, so back here, we're going to go ahead and try to make this bread up now. So the bread is already been cut in half, and my butter is nice and softened. And I'm going to go ahead and just open this up and spread some butter on each bread. That's about a third of a stick right there. Another third right there. I'm going to spread that on. Lather that on. Some garlic bread. Garlic butter bread. Get some decent coverage on there. All the way out to the ends. And you let that butter get room temperature so it can spread easily. See how easy that butter's spreading? Alright. So got some good even coverage. I like to make sure I get my butter all the way out to the edges of my bread. Just making sure I get those edges good too. Up to the point. So we got the butter on there. So next thing I'm gonna do is that secret weapon I told y'all about. Just sprinkle a little bit of sugar. That may be like a quarter teaspoon of sugar on each one of those. It's very little. It's very little at all. And then we'll go ahead and give it a nice healthy dose of garlic. Some garlic, just put it on there. Get you some good coverage. Main thing you want in there is just some good coverage. If you like garlic, go a little heavy. If you don't, go a little lighter. But I'm getting some good coverage on mine. Then take your parsley that we cut up. Go ahead and just lay that out on there evenly. And then we're going to take that finely grated cheese, just lay it on top. Got a little spillage there. Little spillage. And there we go. I'm gonna take those 2 pieces of bread, put them in the oven, and then I'll let you see what it looks like when they come out the oven once that cheese done melted down and that garlic done went all inside of it. So that's the before picture, and then I'll show you the after picture. All right, guys, so had a little, ran out of memory on the other camera, so just summing this up here. I'm at the end here with this Stroganoff now. See how thick that gravy is now? That's what I wanted. So at this point now, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the fire off. I'm going to let that simmer while my bread cooks. And then I'll serve this up and let you see what it looks like on the plate. But that's pretty much the end of that Stroganoff. Those noodles are al dente. They soaked up all of that beef broth salty flavor while they were cooking. So they're not going to be bland in the meal. And the steak has been in there, just soaking up those flavors as well, along with those mushrooms. So everything just looking really good in there right now. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the bread, and then I will be back. All right, y'all. So there's a sneak peek right out the oven. You can see the bread done got a little crispy on the edges and all of that cheese done melted down. This is the perfect doneness on this bread. So we're about to take it out now and go ahead and enjoy our dinner. So I'll let you see it once we start plating. All right, guys. So here's the end result of the beef stroganoff with the garlic Parmesan cheese bread. You can see the Parmesan bread cooked up nice, cheese melted on there, crusted over. And those noodles are so creamy. That sauce is so rich and creamy. So thank you guys for watching along and following us. We really appreciate it, and I hope you try this recipe. And if you do, leave a comment and let me know how you liked it. Papa Top 912 signing off.